This podcast is recorded on Aboriginal land. We pay our respects to elders past and present and recognise that sovereignty was never ceded. Welcome back to the Radical Online Leftist Pipeline Podcast. My name's Mitch Alexander.
My name's Tom Tannicky, influencer.
I'm Celeste Little.
I'm Jordan Vandenlam, also influencer.
I'm just trying to throw off Tom now with the intro. But I want to thank you all for clicking attend on the Facebook event that I made for this, the event aggregator that we still all use to make sure we know what's going on in our lives. This is something we wanted to talk about as a full group because we've been chatting about it a lot in the group chat. And as happens when you start any sort of content production, when you get into the content mills, you go, let's not have a real conversation with friends about this. Let's stop and wait until we can make it content for a podcast. So what we wanted to talk about was basically the concept of leaving social media, whether we should, whether we can, is it ethical? Is it effective? All that sort of shit. And I think just to frame it up top, I think it's important to sort of note that like we're not talking about getting off the internet. We're not talking about getting off our phones. Those are bigger things. That's a digital detox. That's very different. And I don't even think we're really talking about like getting off any sort of app or website that helps you keep in touch with people specifically, like group chats or Discord or whatever. And even the potential for future social media. Maybe a really gorgeous, beautiful, maybe a state-run Albanese branded social media is in our future. But specifically, the bullshit we have now, you know, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, if you're still using it, that sort of shit, whether or not we should get off it. I think a big thing has been, Jordan, you and I have been sort of discussing pretty in-depth from very different points of view, whether we should stay or not. What's your view on leaving social media?
Yeah, I think like for me, I think social media is a tool of capitalism that we can use, and we can use it for good, and we can use it to get people off the internet and into the real life and doing stuff.
Which you've experienced some success with, so it's fair for you to talk about that. It's not just pie-in-the-sky idealism. You've actually managed to get traction doing that. So
Yeah, I agree. I'd agree with that. I think it's for me, it's the modern day, handing out a pamphlet in 1916 Russia. That tells, but that's obviously in real life, but that tells someone, hey, there's going to be a mass meeting here on this day, come to this thing. Obviously, it's a bit different, and it's designed almost to do the opposite of that, to keep people online and, to get them online and for them to stay there. So I feel like when we're doing that, it's a challenge. Like that's not the easiest and most logical way to use the tool of social media. But also like that is like quite frankly, that is that's our method of mass communication these days. People don't watch free-to-air TV. People don't read newspapers. Just every publication's readership is dropping quite significantly. And our attention spans have decreased, and we are consuming short clips of media, and we're doing that on social media sites. So that is like my argument pretty much stems from, I think we can use it as a tool for us to get people out and doing things in their lives.
Ironically, my first thought on that is that our attention spans are shot because of social media. So if we got off, we wouldn't need to use it as much. Yeah, that's the horrible irony. This fucking the hellscape of apps that we currently have.
I feel like the attention span argument. I think social media is a symptom of it rather than the cause of the attention span decreasing. I think our attention spans are decreasing because we're spending more time working, more time traveling to work. For less and less money, and we literally just have less time.
But hang on, there is something to be said for the fact that, you are considered to be online all the time. now.
Mm.
You know, and I see that express itself in little ways through like communication. For example, I'm old enough to remember internet use in an age where there was an abbreviation for AFK, being away from the keyboard. You weren't considered to be present there all the time. We've shifted over the years into an age where people watch your tick, for red receipt, and then, every moment that goes by in which you haven't responded, let alone, you daren't do it for a day or longer, that's a faux pas on your part. That's breaking a social taboo to not respond. You are expected to be online all the time. And I feel that has an aspect to it of fraying people's capacity to absorb and to stay around. People get frayed at the ends. They observe things worse because they're always on. You're always expected to be on.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that you think it's a symptom. Like I said, I've been researching this for the better part of a year now, and that doesn't seem to be the case. So there's a lot of research that's coming out that's saying that basically every mental health marker that we have gets worse the more you consume social media. Now there's a sort of loop in that when your mental health is bad, you're more likely to use social media because that's part of the addictive problem of it. But it's very hard to show causation, but the correlation is very strong. That like one of the most intense ones I saw, and this was pre-pandemic too, that 73% of people who are considered heavy social media users, which I think at the time was only like 2 hours a day, the halcyon days of 2 hours of that, 73% of those people are like chronically lonely compared to about 50% of people that engage with social media once or twice a week. That's intense. That's a really bad sort of setup. And I mean, this is one of my big points is that social media doesn't promote social engagement. It ruins it. And like you said, it's a challenge to do it. The people that are on there less engage in society and their community more. They don't feel as lonely. They don't feel as depressed. They don't feel as anxious. They actually have more time to do things. They feel more accomplished at the end of their weeks. It's this terrible fucking thing. And another point as well is just that I feel like we're at a point in social media discourse, I guess, or talking about it, that's kind of like where we were at before we had all the rock solid evidence that smoking killed you. We're at this point where it's like, we think it's bad. We're not entirely sure why. And it's got some other benefits for you. Like it helps wake you up in the morning like a cigarette. But the research is starting to come out now is like, no, this is really fucking bad for your brain. And you're at least statistically better offline if you jump off. So speaking of, Celeste, you left. You did get off.
To a degree, yeah, I did. And it's so hearing you just say what you've just. Sorry, that wasn't a sentence. Everyone, we're recording in the morning. Like that's all you need to know about how my brain works. It's the morning. But yeah, it's interesting that you say with regards to mental health and the correlation, maybe not necessarily causation, but definite correlation with rapidly deteriorating and poor mental health. Because in my life, I'm not somebody who does suffer from mental health issues. In my life, I think that I've only really gone down the depression tube in a major way twice, maybe 3 times, maybe when I was a teenager and trying to navigate that crap just growing up. But yeah, one of those times was obviously during the pandemic, and it's taken me a long time to claw my way back, not least because in my own brain, knowing people who suffer from clinical depression, working out that situational depression was actually a real thing when you're as stubborn as I am. Not necessarily something that happens. But during the pandemic, my social media increased. In a way, I was seeing it as a lifeline. because I'm an introvert who can't stand being at home. So I'm somebody who needs to be out and about in the world. I don't necessarily need to be talking to people, but I do need to be having that sort of interaction. I need to be of the world in order to get the most out of my life. And the lockdowns kind of curtailed that. So we're all online, and particularly those of us in Victoria trying to navigate personal relationships and basic communications and all that via online spaces. And Twitter in particular, just kind of took off. So there was a lot of mob. We're all on Twitter. There was some interaction. At the time, we thought it was kind of positive. But the reason why I've left social media platforms, at least on a public sense, until very, very recently with my one Instagram account, which is really poorly populated, is that I always actually hated Twitter, and I only really had it because Twitter became probably one of the most important tools for media commentators about 15 years ago, or 12, 15 years ago, when my commentary career was starting out. It was where people were watching, like editors were watching the content to see how people engage with stuff, to get content for their news, because they were noticing the move from legacy media to online. And so that's why a bunch of us who are commentators now came from the online spaces. We were being watched and we were being discovered. So Twitter was really, really dysfunctional for me. But the downside, between the pandemic along with the pandemic, was when I became a political candidate, and I got targeted in the way that I did from the left for having the sheer gall to run as a candidate, the way to the point of having, I forget how many pages worth of attacking tweets and social media posts I had coming my way. So there was that, and I realized that my relationship, this is a long explanation. I realized that my relationship with all social media, including the page on Facebook that I'd maintained for a very long time for my commentary, was incredibly unhealthy, that I couldn't go 10 minutes actually without looking at the thing. If I was brutally honest about it, the only time I didn't was when I was asleep, and then I was probably dreaming about Twitter feeds. My relationship with it was codependent. It was unhealthy. I didn't realize I was also doing my master's at the time, so I started to learn an awful lot about the advertising spaces and how the media is actively cooking us to, it's dragging our data in order to target their particular brands of capitalism right to our inboxes and right to our feeds. So anything we talk about, anything we write about, immediately gets filtered towards these sorts of data readers that then will target ad content our way. So even if you're not purchasing anything, you're actively engaging in a real crooked form. Not that there's any other capitalism. But also the biggest problem with social media, in my case, was that social media became a way that people did their politics. So things like call-out culture got mistaken for taking a stand. Pile-on culture got mistaken for taking a stand. There were various times when that happened to me. I had a final straw moment, which is when I logged out. But it was, that moment wasn't responsible for me leaving social media. It was just like I was on the other side of the planet. Aurora Borealis was going on over my head, and I'm sitting there stressed out about what people were saying about me online, you know.
I I've had stuff like that.
And I just sort of thought, this is bullshit. Why am I still on here? So yeah, it was a final straw moment, but it was a final straw moment that had been going on for years. Like the way that people seem to mistake call-out culture online for political activism and taking a stand really shows to me how unhealthy social media can be, but also how social media actually curtails our activism. So I haven't had a public space now for over 2 years. I've only just started my piddly little Instagram, which is slowly being populated, but that's probably as far as I'll go due to experience and due to capitalism and due to activism.
So then how do you feel not being in these quote unquote communities that the social media companies tell us that they give us?
Look, one of the key ones I remember, there's this really good article that was written by Steve Jones Bungelumbud years ago that talked about blackfella Twitter and how it had been a lifeline for him, and it was very much what the case was at the time. But if I think about blackfella Twitter right now, nearly all of those people no longer have an account on Twitter. They might be engaging in other spaces, but for whatever reason, whether it was because call-out culture or because capitalist ad targeting, or it was the sheer invasion of our privacy constantly that goes on with social media that feeds everything. Most of them aren't on that. They might be fostering other online spaces, but for me, it was essential for my career that I was on it in the early days, but nowadays I actually enjoy putting something out there in the world with regards to commentary and just having people ruminate over that in their own world. They don't need to interact with me in order for what I've written to be valid, and in order for them to think about what sort of response, in favor, against, whatever else, that they could cook up and write themselves in their own space. So that was the real thing. As an Aboriginal woman, there was this access that people just expected of me, and they expected me to maintain. And it was so much more heightened than most other commentators, particularly white male commentators. I didn't see that sort of level. I think all of us have, to an extent, had experiences with doxing and that sort of privacy breach via social media. But social media went from being essential to my career to not feeding it and not servicing it at all.
I hate the fucking word content creator. I'm not like a fucking faucet through which warm diarrhea paste content is just spurts out to be lapped up. That's what it says, isn't it? But we use the word as a shorthand for you make things, all that time and effort. Hundreds of thousands. I've spent thousands of hours, possibly into the tens of thousands of hours, creating content over years, video, writing, It's become my life, you know what I mean? I started it as a creative dream before I was even associated in politics, but then I got swept up in the political wave, you know what I mean, with the threats and the followers and the excitement, People who get swept up in politics and culture wars and grassroots activism can often get swept up in this notion, I'm changing the world. I'm not just making content, I'm actually changing the world. It's addictive. It's a rush. But I just quickly, before I get into my take on my story, I just want to acknowledge that I think for us four, we're not just talking about digital detoxes. You know what I mean? And we're not just talking about, let's just, what's good for our personal sense of harmony. We're actually talking about, we're discussing, and I just wanted to clarify this here, we're discussing the merit and the possibility of, can you log off and continue the various political battles that I know at least certainly all of us four are engaged in. You know what I mean? So that's our extra additional considerations here, you know. Can you do that? Is there a merit to doing that? Are you wasting, you know, Pingers, you might say, are you wasting potential in doing that? You know, is it ever been a good idea to just set up a fucking enclave rather than, you know what I mean, rather than engage in the world? And is it any different with socials? I think what I want to say is that over time, we have come to, and I mean, I think that there's modern sociologists and what have you, or whatever other discipline that have written about this. I've read about it at length. Over time, we've come to conceive of our little online archipelago of social media hubs, our little pages, our Instagram page, our TikTok page, all this and that, as actually being the center of our identity. And I read about that because I was reading about someone who was talking to their child about why their child who was into like modern hip hop looked the same as the kids who were into the modern punk or the modern EDM or what have you. You know, they had sort of similar scenes, and they sort of managed to establish, along with a bit of reading from some of the aforementioned sociologists, that people don't display, like perhaps some of us are used to from our childhoods. People don't display their sense of self on their on their clothes, in their, you know, in their social circles or in their musical subcultures anymore. They don't have to. They actually display their sense of self. It's relocated to their social media pages. That's just the world we live in. You know, it's not on your bedroom wall or your clothes or what have you anymore. So it isn't. This isn't just a question of how much we're online, but it's also how much we've anchored our sense of self to this archipelago of sites that we all have, whether we're content creators or just, you know, ardent sharers of information. So this in turn anchors us all, follower and creator, to the need to post things to express who we are, to continue the ongoing expression of who we are. In context, mind you, and I think this is really vital, the algorithm abandons your content. And in fact, you can't even really search it up through most of these platforms. Within a few days, it just gets lost down there, you know? I've generated knowledge, for example, for years through my Facebook. You can't find it all. Maybe I might be able to find it all. No one else is ever going to see any of it again. So I am someone who was a routine influencer. You know, I've talked again at the start about 10 years of fucking being a content guy in of different eras. And you know what? Like Pingers has experienced these days, for me, from 2016 to 2019, 2020, I regularly got people out IRL to materialise for anti-fascist causes. Like I made people, I helped people to get together and do shit, and it was great.
Well, you actually built community too. Like you were core at being able to do that. It was incredible.
Thank you.
People rallied around your ideas, and I saw it unfold.
Yeah, like it was a creative response to some of those sort of organised racist waves of back then. Or I mean to say it like it's centred creativity and just like ideas and such. And that was really rad. But obviously now things have changed. Pandemic made that hard, put us all online for a few years. We all know that. Since then I've had, location issues, you know. I live away from my old stomping ground. It's not to say that you can't do things in Queensland, but just location issues. I've become online. I'm a little online spooky ghost that goes around now on the socials, you know, by necessity and by circumstance, you know what I mean? And I say that we're having been a guy who was like very much, don't just post, fucking get out there, you know, and I still say it now, of course, that's the right thing. But here we are. It doesn't mean you can't still encourage people out to rallies and such, but I nonetheless did just find myself thinking, okay, well, circumstance being as it is, I have accumulated a lot of knowledge over the years and a lot of interest and a lot of, you know, ideas and capability. I'm going to generate long-form content and I'm going to be online. So as a consequence of all that, and through some of my increasing suspicions, along with a lot of us, about what social media is doing to the world, I came to spam online less. So I went from a guy who posts every fucking day and do content every week to like now I post the content. I just post the content that I've worked hard on. Again, hate the word. But for example, I'm about to publish a video tomorrow that I worked on for 40 to 50 fucking hours, and it's about the closure of a buffet, and it means a lot to me.
I can't wait. I've been waiting for this one.
You know, thank you. I work hard in and around. That's around politics, you know what I mean? It is political, but it's not directly like, here's what this political group is up to, you know? I do also do a lot of networking. I work with media to help stories out, get stories out. I do behind-the-scenes scheming that you need to never know about. You know, lots of stuff, right? But when I go back online, I have to say, and I look at some of my old peers that I think posted as much as me back then and are still kind of doing it now, I have to say, like, I see they're posting regularly. I see them sharing fundraisers and other people's rallies and making their memes and such. And I suppose they might be drawing people's attention to stuff here and there, but, like, I do kind of see poker machine addicts.
Yeah. Yep.
Because I see people addicted to this endorphin rush that has become hardwired to the like button. Their brain is hardwired to the like button. We know this. There is tech in social media, big tech platforms, that has literally been modeled on what Las Vegas pokey tech people do. So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And similarly, so that's for the creators. Sure, I know the sugar rush they get. I've been there myself. But I similarly see the followers of those people who like and share that content, because let's face it, you know, politics aside, you know what I mean? We also do experience that same endorphin rush from a share, because a share, fundamentally, what is the language of a share? It's kind of like going, look at this content.
Yeah.
Not just because it's important, but sometimes also because it helps to paint a picture of the great tapestry that is my personality. Again,
Exactly.
Archipelago of social media pages that make up who you are. So when I think about all that, and when I think about the things I've come to learn over the years about surveillance capitalism and the way that big tech, you know, you are not, whether you're a follower or a creator, or even if you're making money from the platform, you are not a user of it. You are the data. You know, you are the profit. And when I think about all that, when I think about how nothing that you do on social media lasts, unfortunately, YouTube might be said to be a little bit different. You can find very old stuff on there. You can, and people do tap into it regularly. But, you know, Google are doing their level best to ruin that as well. Yeah. And they've well and truly also ruined it with Google search and with all the big tech media platforms. The knowledge you generate vanishes. I don't have some Shakespearean fucking notion of wanting creative immortality here. I'm not beset by those fucking, you know, egocentric notions. But I do want to know that my knowledge lasts. Yeah. And I know that once it's 3 days old on Facebook or Twitter, it's gone forever, and no one's ever bringing it back up again unless it's to get you in trouble for something 7 years later.
Totally.
Yeah, it's the affordances of social media work against progressives and the accumulation of knowledge and the work we want to do, and work really well for conservative reactionary stuff. Like, there's a number of different things at play there, Taniki. Like you mentioned, like the stuff disappears. Unless a dirt unit for Labor or the Liberal Party wants to trawl through your shit from 15 years ago and bring up old out of context messages, right? Catherine Cross has this amazing book called Log Off, which I would highly recommend everyone go read. A media communicator involved through like Gamergate and adjacent shit as well, has seen both sides of it, investigates it, makes some really fucking good points in that book. A big one sort of being that like social media, like you said, Taniki, is designed deliberately to be addictive like poker machines. We know that they do that. It also is designed to make everyone individualized and alienated from other people to keep them more on the app, because the app is the only place where they're supposed to be getting their information. And it also stops progressives, or like you said, Jordan, it's a challenge to make progressive politics happen on those platforms. Because when we're individuated, when we're feeding content, when we're trying to get people out onto the streets, they go out onto the streets, they take photos of the streets, they post them back on the platform. Then you share it and you put it and you share it and you get it out there again and you're back into the churn. And it doesn't facilitate easily collective action. It doesn't facilitate starting online and staying offline.
Yeah.
And it doesn't facilitate collective action, where we all discuss things in a good faith way to then get onto the street in a group. However, for conservatives and reactionaries, you only need a bunch of crazy individuals in one spot. And so Catherine Cross argues that it's really actually quite good to rile a bunch of people up who have amorphous fears or anger towards something, who are vaguely all right-wing, get them into one spot and then just cause chaos. And that's all they need to do. And so it works for right-wing reactionary politics, but it doesn't work as easily for progressives. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk on that just quickly too is, Celeste, you mentioned people feeling like they're doing things online. And it works through that. So I had a look, pingers, and you've got 70,000 followers on Instagram. That's fucking heaps. That's got a lot of like views out and stuff. Punters Politics has 350,000 followers on Instagram, and he started well after you started. Like you both sort of, branched. And Punters is using the affordances of social media to stay on social media, to appear like he's acting while on social media. And like you said, Taniki, like all of his followers are. So he's doing a thing at the moment where he's raising money for billboards. So he makes some content. He does this video, it's got his face on it, and he goes, I'm going to do these billboards. Isn't that funny? And people see that when they're on their couch and they go, fuck, that is good. I want to do something here. And they see the link to the charity button. They see the link to the donation. So without getting off their couch, they go, sick, I'm going to donate to this. They donate it, that goes out the door. Then the billboard goes out. And they're not going to fucking see it, right? Because billboards sit there for a week. A few people see it. Not you. You're not going to see it. But it's there. But Punters and a couple other people are going to see it, and they'll take photos and they'll take videos and they'll make that into content as well. So that comes back onto the platform. Then you see that. You see the result of your donation that you made through your phone back on social media, and you go, oh, fuck, I did something. And then you share that. And then other people see that something has happened there. This whole time, nothing has taken place. One billboard with no actionable content on it. No, not telling you who to vote for, not telling you what the problem is. For context, the billboard's going to say, well, the billboard's going to have a picture of Punter's face on it, and it's going to say, gas companies don't get taxed properly. And you look at it and you go, okay.
Yeah, we know.
And then, yeah, exactly. And then once that gets like brought back into content, it stays on the platform. And it's really pernicious, because the other main thing is that these companies spend fucking hundreds of millions of dollars trying to convince us that what we're doing is effective and that what we're building is a real community and that we don't have better options. Now, I don't know. I think I know what's more likely here. There is a scenario in which these social media companies are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on marketing, advertising, and research to convince us that they're the only place for community that we have. And it just so happens coincidentally that they are correct and they're the only fucking community we have. Or the other scenario is that we've been sucked in by their hundreds of millions of dollars of research deliberately designed to suck us in, right? And I just want everyone to think about, like, if you can't get off social media right now, some people have their fucking entire jobs on Instagram. That's how they make money. Yeah. I get it. It's fucking difficult. But we have centuries of knowledge of how to build communities offline. And now we have the internet. And when you combine those two things, I refuse to believe that the only outcome of combining those two things is going, we need to use the private platform of the Nazi billionaire. No, we can think of new, better ways of doing things. Yeah. And as progressives, we have to. I feel like it is a conservative mindset to look at anything and go, well, that's just the way it is. Let's not bother fiddling with that. We can't change that. Let's do something else, or let's fiddle around the edges. I believe that the most progressive mentality that we can take is to look at the world, and clear-eyed, we have to have realistic assessments of it. So Jordan, you're right. No one is looking at legacy media much anymore. A lot of people are on these social media sites. Absolutely. Yeah. But we then need to start with our thoughts and feelings of what a better world will fucking be, and we need to work towards it step by step. Because as progressives, for me, when I hear people being like, well, no one's getting off Twitter or no one's getting off Instagram, I compare that to this idea that we're currently grappling with as progressives, where we are trying to overhaul how every country on earth produces and consumes energy. And we're also trying to change the economic system that is accounting for all of that in order to not raise CO2 levels to a point where the world burns. Now, what's more unreasonable, that or some people getting off a social media site? Like that's my hope. That's my motivating point as a progressive, is that we can take a bunch of small steps all of the time. Something like doing this podcast, encouraging people to limit their use to start with before jumping off completely. Because we've got real big fucking problems that we have to think positively about and we have to be imaginative about. And that's my hope with this conversation.
I was going to say, in my heyday, I think that I had, and this isn't bad for when I jumped off. So I jumped off Twitter 2.5 years ago, when I had 45,000 followers, and that was on Twitter and on my Facebook page. And yeah, the whole social media has the ability to be a tool to attract attention to an issue. And from there, if people are really smart about it, they can actually build community, and they can build it outside of the confines of neo-Nazi social media platforms. Like they can actually exchange the ideas and take them elsewhere and build communities. They can have real tangible sort of conversations. In the union movement, we talk an awful lot about how do you build communities at a time when everyone is segmented. And I think that is something that as leftists, we really need to get our heads around, how to reorganize stuff at a time when not only is collective action being stymied by social media, but people do believe that they're taking action if they call something out, or if they hit a GoFundMe, or if they do this, or if they do that. You know, we do need to grapple with it, and we can grapple with it outside, because the one thing that hasn't suffered from me getting off social media is I can go and look at my articles online and see that the shares are roughly the same as what they were prior to me being on it, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Then again, I will say this, the left tends to have a lot of really great reasons and rationales for why they should do things that ultimately, over the past 10 years, always seem to culminate in hopping out of right-wing spaces as right-wing spaces get more and more, encroach more and more on everyone's space, until we get to where we are in 2025, where we officially live in fucking clown world. The right's cherished vibe shift is real. Everyone's a fucking clown. They're the platform now. You know, the notion is really whether we get platformed on their platforms now. We're the ones who need the platforming. You know what I mean? After all of our debating over platforming the far right, well, we're the ones who might at best hope to be platformed or get a scrap of their things now. So I want to ask you, Jordan, you're the person who's got this successful experience of not just posting, you know, as in getting people off. What do you reckon, and why do you reckon it?
Yeah, so I think it's tough. So I want to take Twitter as an example, because when I joined Twitter, I joined it because the media class of people, the people whose production, the labor that they produced was traditional media, were on there, and I wanted to speak to them. And I wanted to help shift a narrative amongst the people who had a much broader reach than I, even though it's, you know, quite quickly diminishing. But that was the reason that I joined Twitter, and that was quite successful in terms of reaching that class of person, but then also reaching the people that they spoke to convince them. Well, they didn't really do the convincing that my arguments tried to do. They just reported on what I was saying. But as a result, it allowed me to take those people that had been convinced and move them into doing other things. But that, like, Twitter wasn't the tool for that. That was mainly, honestly, like my largest platform is TikTok. I had neglected Instagram for like a year. After I started, but like Instagram, unfortunately, is the most mobilizing, which is kind of ridiculous.
Why do you say ridiculous?
I have a much smaller followership on Instagram, so I don't get that.
People take action more. Why? I don't know. People seem to take action more.
Yeah, the engagement on my profile, like in the traditional sense, is very high, but that's, I think, partly due to it being, a bit controversial. But also there are repeat, people with the same politics who are continually involved and chatting amongst each other in the various, and also like, I've got a subreddit as well, which has like 40,000 people in it. There's the Don't Rent Me Facebook group, which has like 90,000 people. There's a Discord, which is a lot more like an actual online community than TikTok or Instagram. But yeah, I think so. So the Twitter thing, that was a slightly different project to the other social media stuff. And that's like, I feel like the way that that's going, it's time to probably move on from Twitter at least. But that's also why I've started with a bunch of other people a Substack, because the media class has fled Twitter to Substack, and that's the disenfranchised, writer from The Age or whatever, who's looking to publish their own stuff without getting fired, perhaps under an alias or something. Sorry, my cat's just vomited behind me.
Oh no!
And incredible. So, and that's the reason. And like, I think so. When I joined Twitter, there were Nazis on there for sure, but I've always been of the opinion that we shouldn't just give the Nazis their own platform and all of us leave. I think we should be there in spaces like that fighting them. This is prior, obviously, to Elon Musk purchasing, like the Nazi purchasing the Nazi platform. That we should be contesting and not ceding ground to people, because, like, frankly, our arguments are better, and they aren't particularly collective. So theoretically, we should be able to combat them. We know that based on how social media algorithms work, that's not how it works.
That's the problem, yeah.
But like, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't fight. I don't think there'd ever be a point where I believe in that. And Celeste also had a really good example about the time where we didn't do that, regarding the going cashless. Going cashless is a cooker argument. I mean, not offering cash is a cooker argument now.
Really, really quickly, for those not in the know, and I know that people like Carlson and Cash Savage and that are in the know, because we've ranted over it over a couple of beers. But I noticed really early on that as society went more and more cashless, the people that were owning that space and making the arguments to it were actually the cooker communities who had tapped into the World Health Organization's trying to kill us all through vaccinations and put microchips in us. When really, let me try again. The people who weren't interrogating it was a vast chunk of the left, when really we should have been, because what is going on with cashless societies is that we're constantly purchasing stuff. That data is then being on-sold to various agencies who then use that data to push us tailored ad content on various social media sites, on Google, on whatever else it is that we use. So,
to politicians as well.
Yeah.
I so agree. You're so right. The cooker community had the weather vane for so many more anti-authoritarian and real working class struggles for a lot of the pandemic and afterwards than you can see from a lot of the left establishment and the centre left, who have just become shills for cops, big government, big surveillance. Fucking pathetic, and definitely no comrades of mine. You're absolutely right. Cooker community are reliable for a lot of those issues, like, and we should never have ceded them to them, but perhaps I shouldn't even be saying that. It's like we should be going to join them there, because post-pandemic, I am not bitter about their stance on vaccines. I understand. We had that battle. I was very much, a lot of them that fucking hate me, and the guy who came up with the term cooker, blah, 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 all that shit. But I'm saying that they had the right of a lot of those other issues, and we should be there with them. Rather than talking about ceding ground to them, they got the right of it. and it's a conversation we should all be having together.
I think you see a lot is that they have the right vibe. They're not their targets aren't correct, because that's when it gets into a lot of like, immigration's the problem and shit like that. But they are 100% correct. It's like, things are really fucked right now. We need to stop things being fucked. And then if we quote unquote like seed the ground, then it goes to, either Andrew Tate or Peter Dutton.
I'd also say, like, I think that's like you referred to us as progressives a few times, and I don't consider myself a progressive. Like, I consider myself a leftist, an anti-capitalist, which is fundamentally different in my opinion. But I feel like it's the, like, there were leftists there having that argument, but it was the progressives that weren't. I don't know. I don't like progressives because I think they're a bit useless.
Okay. Well, I think this is getting too far afield, because you're 100% a progressive, but this is another long form chat that we'll have at a certain point. The importance of labels and how we label ourselves and the taxonomy we use to cut up all our little different political, but like broadly, like left wing, communist, progressive. Okay, sure.
Yeah, but there is a genuine discourse on among a lot of leftists about how resenting the term progressive. You know what I mean? I mean, you're saying it doesn't necessarily matter. It's neither here nor there. Like, when I don't mean to misrepresent your politics, but you'll find a lot of leftists who don't like the term, and they consider it a kind of a lib washing of genuine radical politics or what have you. But anyway, you're quite right. It could be a semantic discussion between all of us. You know what I mean? Another time.
So, Pingers, you mentioned like seeding ground to them, and I want to sort of like unpack that a little bit, just because of this idea that like I've mentioned before, that like these communities that we apparently have online spaces. You saw a lot of this with the under 16 ban being proposed, and I think it's bullshit. I don't think these places foster. I think they don't foster community at all. I think at a very sort of strong, on the other end, you could say that they foster a shitty community. But regardless, it's a fact that these companies are spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to convince us that they have a great community fostering ability. And I want to interrogate this as well, because let's say that there is some efficacy in pushing back against Nazis and fighting against the affordances of these platforms and struggling instead of leaving. What I see when we're talking about a community for, I won't say progressives, I'll say leftists.
Thank you.
or queer people, but progressives like yourself, Pinger. These communities that we've got, it's now used as a slur against you. I'm sorry.
It is a slur.
You nuisance.
So we've got like, what can we do when we're on there? Like, technically, we've got comments and they're public. We've got shares and likes, which signal to others sort of our personality and what our politics are. And then we've got DMs, right? So we've got group DMs and personal ones. And that's sort of it. And some of those are really good. Like group DMs for organizing can be really helpful, especially for fast-paced stuff. When you're on the ground and you need people at certain intersections and shit. 100%. Those group chats are good. But we're still looking at the big platforms like, say, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. All we've got are likes and shares that signal our personality. And that's not a real community. That is a lot of individuals sort of signaling to each other what they're into, which is as surface level, not even as surface level. That's less than going to like a concert and seeing someone in a band shirt and going, you're into that band. Cool. But then all we've got to say, public comments, DMs and stuff. And it's up to us to get off the platforms and develop genuinely like meaningful connections. Like, I will add, people have done for years, decades, centuries before social media existed. But even just to get those bare bone features, you have to put up with the content and the platforms and the people. So just to be able to like, share, comment, DM, group chat, you need to put up with fucking eating disorder content shoveled into your fucking face. You need to put up with white nationalism. You need to put up with violent misogyny that is like ruining children's minds at the moment and changing how they interact with people offline. Yeah, you get ads for really fucked, stupid shit that no one needs. And all of that is going to the coffers of these big tech conglomerates to do horrible shit overseas, like facilitated genocide in Myanmar and stuff. That's a whole other moral argument. But then you've also got your local Nazi Bob who comes along and hurls abuse at people, and especially when we're talking about communities of marginalized people, of at-risk people, they're to have the community on Twitter or Instagram. I've seen it on our fucking content because of your reach, Jordan. We have people coming along and being racist and needling Celeste nearly every fucking time. And we can engage with them and it boosts our engagement if we do. But then one of our crew has to cop shit that we then have to block. So, and we know that ruins us mentally. It's not good for our mental health to have that shit. So when we're talking about community, I want to challenge the idea that what we've currently got on these big platforms is fucking worth it. Because if we look at this, and this is an extreme example, but I'm a philosopher, it's what I do. I loved the idea, I was thinking the other night, of if Vic Socialists had a day in the park where we sort of like everyone got together and it was an invitation to come along. But on every tree, there was an ad for either eating disorder or misogynist shit. And we couldn't take those posters down. And then Fuckwit came along, Fuckwit Bob, and he was allowed to say one horrible thing to everyone there before we blocked him and cut him off. We wouldn't accept it. And if we wouldn't accept it there, then we're admitting that there is a spectrum of what we would accept. And so if we roll it back a bit, let's say that Vic Socialists start a message board. And if the message board was then populated by that bullshit content, the depressive content that ruined people's mental health, and then had a bunch of fucking white nationalists or dickhead gronks or Elon Musk dick suckers coming through, you would kick them out. You wouldn't accept it there. And if they got in and they changed the passwords and they were stuck there, you would leave. I don't think it's a case that you would go, well, this is our website. We have to stay here. You'd go, oh, we'll start another one. That's fine. Like you guys have this domain. Whatever, we'll start a new domain. We'll tell people to leave there and not do it because it's our small bespoke internet community we're trying to build. So for me, it's just a matter of taking that another step to these big boards that we have been convinced with hundreds of millions of dollars of research to tell us that it's the only community we've got. And we have this entrenched inertia as well. We have this feeling of, well, I'm on Twitter and I've been on Twitter, so I will be on Twitter. And again, I think it's always worth challenging that of like, well, fuck, why though? Like, is it worth copying this shit in so many directions? And this is something that we talked about in the group chat, Jordan. Is it worth, especially for someone in your position and in my position, in all four of us individually, the podcast position as well, we post content. We, in a way, are keeping people there who aren't content creators, who might not be able to get to our social groups, or who are already in these social circles offline, but they're there for our posts. Yeah, they like our posts. They feel like they're being effective. And is this sort of idea of like, well, we don't want to cede ground to the Nazis. So for that to happen, I need to keep posting, and I'm keeping people there. I'm keeping people exposed to Nazi, eating disorder, misogynist content. But if they're only there for you, you should leave. Because then it'll help them get off. And that's what I'm wrestling with too. I got to say as well, I'm a hypocrite. I'm still on these fucking platforms and I want to get off. And I'm struggling with it. This is me trying to figure out how to do it. But just that thought of like, fuck, if we're keeping people exposed to that shit, do we have an obligation to fuck off if it will make it easier for them to get off? It's like, fuck, I think maybe.
I disagree. I don't think people are there on Twitter just for me, for example. But also, you've raised like quite a few arguments there, and I think one of the ones that I wanted to get at first was, like you said, that fucking now the leaf blower starts again.
Fucking cunt.
He knew. We've been in touch with him.
He's listening.
This is all that undermine your arguments, you know.
Yeah.
Fuck's sake. But that's the point where like we don't just have the ability to like share and comment. We have the ability to make arguments, and our arguments are better. And it's the same as what we used to be able to do in the early 1900s, like when we had the printing press. Like, here's the argument: take it, sit down, discuss. Like, shout at your comrades in the mess hall or whatever about what this workers' paper has discussed. It's not the same, obviously, because it's also there's your workers' argument, and then there's the fucking Nazi, and then there's the eating disorder as well. But we have the ability to be like, well, that's fucking shit. Here's why. This is good. Here's why. And argue and make our case. And frankly, our arguments are better.
Better doesn't enact anything, because like, you know, the dreaded progressive, the progressive we don't like, has retreated to online. Like, you know, like American Democrats are a great example. Yeah. But what they do now is argue online, and they don't do anything else, and it hasn't been effective.
Fuck them. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, even if our arguments are better,
but they're not our argument. They're the Democrats' arguments are not our arguments. They're shit arguments.
even if our arguments are better, though, it hasn't worked.
No, but that's because we've abandoned the space, just like we did with the Cookers arguments. We left the space. We ceded the ground. No, our arguments were not made. But also your question at the end about whether it's worth it. I think yes, it's worth it, because I wouldn't have been able to do any of the in-person organizing that I did unless I was on the Nazi Twitter, for example. So I think it is worth it.
It wasn't Nazi Twitter when you got there, though. So like, I don't doubt, like Celeste as well. Like, 10, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, absolutely Twitter was fucking well worth it for a writer. But I think that it's this idea of being stuck in the now and going like, well, like, because it was good 15 years ago, we should stay there now, as opposed to this idea of like, let's just churn through social media sites. If it's no longer worth, because you've mentioned, Jordan, that like Twitter doesn't look like it's worth it now. I was like, yeah, because shit changes all the time. And it's like our arguments might be the best ones, but if a Nazi is running the platform, they can shut those arguments down and they can boost the bad ones. And this is the other thing as well. And like part of my research is that the arguments don't matter. It's the emotive effect. You don't get across to someone on social media the way you do in person, the way you do even with a newspaper, the way we have digital content come through to us. Like Tom was saying, it comes and it disappears. We don't sit with it in the same way, and it doesn't seem to change minds. And you can see that with the right wing. But
I think it does.
I would say not enough people.
No, probably not enough people.
What's the algorithm there? I mean, what's the calculus there? How much is enough people? I mean, is it,
is one enough?
If Pingers ends up with 10 people more at him out at an action, what I mean? One of these really important actions. Is that not enough? And I say that as someone who every boots on ground counts depending on what kind of action it is. It may well be that every single person counts, you know what I mean? And you know what? Actually, to be honest with you, I use far-right platforms now that we're in clown world. Like, I have an Odyssey account. It's a fucking Nazi platform. You know what I've used it for? I've used it for one video so far. I'm about to use it for a second one. First video I used it for was one about Spanion. I included stuff in there that I could not post on big tech platforms. Right. It got removed off YouTube. If I did another couple of videos like that, I'd lose my account altogether, because I wanted to include Spanion sucking Hitler off. And I did. I got to put it in there. I re-uploaded it on YouTube, and it's not like a AI video of him doing that. Don't worry, guys. It's just he was just saying Hitler was a great man, and I put that up there, and that was really good for people to see. And it's still linked from my YouTube now. My second video I'm about to use it for is there's a Nazi creator called Ozpil. That kind of thing. Yeah, well, he's incredibly litigious. He uses defamation notices whenever you talk shit about him. And boy, did I talk shit about him. I did a video that really got on his fucking nerves, I'm told. And he filed a defamation notice within hours. So I'm going to re-upload it on the Nazi platform. You know what I mean? If he pisses me off again, if he annoys me again, I'm going to teach him a lesson. And I'll upload more annoying content like that. These are the free speech essentialist platforms that Nazis created to entertain each other. There is a use for them now that we are in clown world. And I think this is where I like Mitch, I expressed a lot of the same anxieties and are aware of a lot of the same anxieties as you. But at the same time, I think maybe Pingers' argument is like a realist argument of like, okay, now that we're in clown world, what do we do? You know what I mean? And then maybe those 10 people that show up with you at a rally are the best you can get sometimes, But none of that is to say that we can't imagine a better world. You know what I mean? I just don't. We're crawling in the muck right now, man. We really are,
But see, you even mentioned that like you tried to put something up on YouTube and it was taken down. This is another problem with these social media things for building platforms and getting boots on the ground. If we're concentrated in one spot, then we're fucked if they decide we're fucked. It's not up to us. If we have a plurality of places where we can go, we're technically getting off those platforms incrementally just to ensure that, like, if Musk decides to nuke all of the accounts, then it's all been for naught and we're fucked. And if we only have Twitter where we do work, then we're suddenly building up. Again, if we've only got YouTube, only got Instagram, we're fucked. So I think branching out into as many different spots as we possibly can is in a sense getting off the platforms in a way, going somewhere sort of smaller and more niche to build these sort of things. But when you say, but you do work and we get 10 people out and maybe that's all you sort of get, I just don't know if there's a good moral and even like practical argument for those 10 people if we're not also building the alternatives deliberately. Because to get those 10 people, we've had to ruin all of their mental health. We've had to expose our comrades and at-risk people to shitheads and bad content and ads. And we've also done it in a way that makes these companies richer and able to do fucked things elsewhere. So I'm not even necessarily saying let's all log out of Twitter right now, though I think with Twitter, it's kind of a good argument maybe because it's looking pretty shit. But all of these platforms, let's, like we did to MySpace and Vine, let's just start migrating. Let's just look, because like you said, like as well, Jordan, you've started a Substack. Like so have I. Yeah. There's problems with the Substack, but blogging in general is making a sort of comeback. I missed the Pearl Drummers Forum that I had in high school, which was sick because it did have sort of other communication, but it was small and we talked about mostly drums, but then politics and shit like that. And I feel like even if, and is 10 enough? Is 1 enough? I'm of the mind that if we, like the reason I do content like this podcast and whatnot is that if we have just as many listeners as the Young IPA podcast, then I'm fucking happy. That's all I sort of want. The Shithouse podcast, and I want to counter those ideas too. But I'm not sure if going to these huge tech platforms which are built against us now without actively, which you do, actively going, this is a start. Don't stay here. Don't be sucked into thinking that this is effective. Let's keep fucking going. Let's get out on the streets. I think if you're not doing that at the very least, then that's when there's the sort of the issue. And I think it's up for not just individuals, but us as our own genuine community to go, all right, how bad is Twitter now? What's the risk like? Like how, like now, because now you've got the blue check thing surfaces those comments first. So you've got to wade through shit to find your stuff. If you're not willing to pay Elon Musk directly for a blue check, you are not getting heard and seen against the Nazis who are happy to pay for that. Yeah. And so it's like so in the same way that 10 boots on the streets might be worth it, what's worth getting your voice out on Twitter? The other thing I just really want to quickly mention, I think, Tom, you could expand on it too, is that generally speaking, the cookers, the neo-Nazis, the fascists, the weird 4chan guys, they want to be where we are. Truth Social isn't that good. It never really spun up massively. Rumble as well, because they crave legitimacy. They wanted Twitter to turn into the cesspit that it is because the journalists were there, because the normal people were there. And I have a feeling that if we all just fucked off and left, they would want to go where we went because they don't like having a circle jerk. They like fighting. They like going, you triggered, snowflake. I bet you fucking hate this. And if we just go, I don't care. We know from their own spaces that they hate it.
Yeah, well, they're fighting for the town square. They're fighting for the town square. 100%. But as long as the notion holds that Twitter is the town square, then leaving it may not be great in and of its own accord. I don't know.
But see, even then, we've got 5 million active Twitter users in Australia versus 14 million on Facebook. So already,
it's never been a very highly populated, even for America as a percentage of the population.
That's nothing.
A small wedge of people with very loud.
It was just the media class. That's right. That's who lived there. Yeah.
Well, I think a more healthy online usage could, at least for the time being, involve, yes, all right, if you feel the need and if you feel that your usage of big tech platforms is having, a material or political gain of some sort for you, well, then there is a good reason to perhaps persist until you are able to take that audience with you or something of that order or find a better one. But a healthy online use should also involve more I don't know if the word is ethical. We're not just talking about ethics. Ethical, productive, and less, ruinous spaces as well. So if you find independent spaces, or if you find social media platforms that you can use to cultivate an audience, I don't know. Is it fucking Blue Sky? Cross almighty, there's some annoying cunts on there. Is it that, Smoke?
But also like Telegram, WhatsApp. Like WhatsApp's through Meta, but Telegram, Signal, shit like that. Like there are alternatives for that. I'm not saying we get rid of the internet shit.
Yeah, I'm on them. Like I'm on
You
Threads,
are
I'm
on
on
those.
Blue Sky, I'm on fucking Red Note, I'm on like all of them.
Yeah,
because we do have to migrate. Unfortunately, they are all owned by the same person with a different name.
Yeah,
I guess. But I don't think that we should be making arguments not to diversify.
Yeah.
In the meantime, that's silly. Might as well.
But I think diversifying is in itself a way of leaving the platforms, right?
Yeah.
Like if you've got two platforms, you can't really, or you can now, like fucking phone addiction. You can basically be on both at the same time. You get phone in one hand, PC on the other. But if you've got 12 and you're producing, you can't really be on them all at once. And that is a way to sort of migrate across. And there's a lot of good open source things like Beehive for blogging instead of Substack. There's some good like group chat things. And I feel like we have good opportunities here to like hopefully with the federal election, break this like seeming monopoly that's coming out and get back to the early internet shit of like coming up with our own websites and forums and shit, coming up with these sort of more bespoke things that people in our community sort of like, and I mean, like Discord itself works to a degree for that stuff, but like Rahu we've got groups happening. Vic Socialists have smaller groups. Like just, I want to get it off these major platforms again, especially because we have an opportunity in the West to break away from it. Like I said that people have their businesses on Instagram. It's going to be difficult. But in places across the world, Facebook gives people the internet and then locks them into only using portals through Facebook. And they do that by taking the money that they make off of us in the West and spending it over there. They're much more locked in than we are. So I feel like, they've got a lot of issues with all of these things. That aren't easily resolved, I think, in the short term. And I think it's for me, it's about the small steps constantly towards doing it. Which one small step, dear listener, if you're listening to this and you happen right now to be scrolling a social media app, get out of the app, turn it off. Quick, hit the lock screen on your phone. Quick. Just do it. Don't think.
But before you do it, follow me on Twitter.
Yeah. And speaking of,
just quickly give me a little follow and then log off.
Yeah, please, kindly. But like with the, I just want to talk before we finish on the Substack thing. The Substack thing, like we started a collective one, and it's called "What Is to Be Done," with a question mark, because it's about publishing theory, like practical theory, and then with the call to action, political education, politically educating you, and then saying, here's what you do with it in the real life. That's the whole purpose of the Substack. And it's a collective project. There'll be articles on there that are published that I disagree with and whatever. But the point of it is to bring people out from the internet into the real life. And that's the whole intention behind it. And I think that is overall a positive thing, even if there are Nazis on there too.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not going to be ending up on any microblogging platforms ever again that I can see. So Threads is out for me, Blue Sky is out for me. The mode of communication that those tools use, I feel so damaged by my time on them that I now just don't want to engage in them. And it's really weird actually, because I was thinking the Twitter and the necessity rather of using that as a commentator, say 10, 15 years ago, and how that shifted. Because the first time when I first went on Facebook, or when Facebook was launched, I was like 28 years old. And there is a whole generation of people who Facebook has formed their entire life. So, I was at uni using Netscape Navigator. I am that old, people. I've been carbon
You're
dated.
not 30?
We've got a whole other video to talk about mourning the old internet, because I could talk about this for 20 years. You know what I mean? That is a subject that I could explore with you 100%.
Yeah. No,
I'm
definitely not 30, but it's really weird because one of the commentators, or one of the social media users that I've admired for the longest is our mate Slack Bastard. And Slack Bastard, trying to get traction for the stuff that he puts out in the social media space, has been a constant problem for him, because he is getting buried by the algorithm. He is getting, as an anarchist commentator, he is getting buried by every single thing that Nazi platforms can throw at him at this point in time. But also, I remember there was a little exchange that him and I had, because I was considering shelving my Facebook page, which I have done too. I don't have a Facebook page anymore. And I said, blogging seems to be not a thing anymore. And he just wrote smart ass back something along the lines of, oh, well, fuck my life, or fuck my blog. The funny thing is that I am actually back on my blog. If people want to interact and want to see different things that I'm writing, it's pretty personal at the moment. I'm just writing stuff about family history and what's occurring to me. And political stuff along the lines of White Australia policy, wardship policies, how I interact as a human with past government policies. My blog is actually going off again, and it's a Blogspot one. Everyone was using Blogspot 15 years ago. Nobody has used it for 10 years. And now suddenly I'm back there.
Can you use LiveJournal? Does that exist? Does LiveJournal exist?
I think it still does, but
it does.
It's kind of,
wow.
It's kind of, it is actually refreshing to just be back in that space. And if people want to read it, they can. My Wikipedia page hasn't changed an awful lot due to what I've written on it, so I'm quite amazed by that. But yeah, I do feel healthier mentally. I feel healthier for that, and I don't know. It is interesting taking stock and coming out the other end of that and realizing the darkness that it did foster in me, just being a part of social media.
Blogs have taken off. And they're taken off. They're like vinyl. They're back. A lot of writers are using them. And
they
it's great.
are like vinyl. That's a good one, yeah.
But what I like too, because I've been blogging again, but purely for my own sake. I'm doing a PhD. I want to get back into writing for the sake of writing. So it's because it's a skill. And so I started a blog, and I'm enjoying it, and it's good. And Pingers, you recommended it on your new one somehow. I don't even know how Substack sort of works, but you've had a recommendation come up, and I've been getting subscribers off the back of that pretty fucking consistently. And that to me is already a better community building exercise and internet use than social media, because I've gotten followers off this podcast posting clips, and that's not really come to anything. But for the blog, I've got these nice considered thoughts that people can engage with, just the considered thought. And that to me is how we do it. Let's funnel everyone off of the fucking platforms. Turn your phone off if you're listening. Close your lock screen. But go subscribe to all of our fucking blogs and send us some blogs, not on fucking social media, via email, alpdotgov@proton.me.
Nice.
Let us know. I'm professional. Yeah. Let us know where we should be going outside of this, right? So this is my last actual thing I wanted to say. If you listening have suggestions for fucking in-person communities, for small bespoke websites, for fucking anything that can get us using Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook less, send it to us and we'll broadcast it out as well. 100%. This is how we do it. It's slower fucking work than going, I've hit follow on an Instagram page. That's nothing. You don't get anything from that. You get it from listening to amazing, smart, gorgeous podcast hosts talk to you about it. But then that's how I want to build this shit, is deliberative action off the social media. Thanks again for listening to another episode of the Radical Online Leftist Pipeline podcast. It's fucking humid today when we're recording. It's very hot. If you have an email to send, like I said, send it to alpdotgov@proton.me. Our theme music is done by Al Carlson and our artwork is done by Sam Wallman. Both of them you can find on social media. But they also have like band camps where you can buy the fucking music. They have a Patreon where you can support the artist directly. Go to that. Chuck them a follow in this moment as well. But then, like I said, close your phone.
And chuck me a follow and share my last posts, whatever they were. I don't know what they were. I just need you to share them. I need you to share them. I need you to please.